Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook. Hello and welcome to today's Fleet Geeks podcast. I'm here in my sauna, or it looks like my sauna. Good news for those watching on YouTube, I am fully dressed. And I'm here to talk about how to get your operator license application correct, or amendment as the case may be. One of the things that we get called in to help with on a regular basis is people who are struggling to get an application completed correctly, or errors in communicating with the traffic commissioner around an amendment or an application. And I just wanted to have a talk through some of the common issues that I find when people do their O license applications and they get incorrect. So the first thing is that you need to fill out your type of license. So where are you going to be operating? Make sure that you apply for the right type of license, whether it's national, standard national, restricted, or standard international. We need to make sure that we're 100% clear on that we're applying for the right type of license. Apply for a restricted license when you're not a restricted operator. It's going to get batted back at you. So it's really important to make sure we get that right. Second thing, business type. Make sure you know whether you're going to be a limited or a sole trader. And if you are a sole trader or a limited company, you need to provide the financial bank statements to cover that name of the entity that you provide. So whether it's your name, whether it's a trading name, whether it's a limited company, those financial statements need to be in the name of that business type and name that you put on the application. Okay, we need to make sure we get that right. And then business details, obviously it's important to get those correct. Addresses. One of the things I commonly see is a correspondence address and an operating centre being muddled up. I often see that adverts have been placed for correspondence addresses rather than the actual operating centre. So it's really, really important to make sure we nail those addresses correctly, make sure we have no typos on the email address, and make sure that we've got the right type of contact number as well to ensure that everything is correct at the time of application. It might seem basic, but it's something that is often overlooked and is really, really important. Okay, so make sure the correspondence address, that's where they're going to send post to, that's where they're going to send correspondence to. Your operating center might be somewhere different. They might both be the same location, but they might be somewhere different if you're just parking vehicles up. We need to make sure that we've got the right name and date of birth for the application, which is usually something that isn't got wrong. But the operating centers is something that people often get. They might get the margins incorrect on the application. They might write the operating center a certain way on the application and then write it differently on the advertisement. We need to make sure that those addresses all match up correctly. We also, one of the common mistakes I find is that the wording on the advertisement is incorrect. People rely on the news provider, whoever the magazine or paper is, newspaper that the advert's in. It won't be a magazine. I don't know why I said that, but the newspaper, they rely on them to provide the right wording, but actually you need to go and make sure that you've got the right wording for that advertisement and make sure that you're advertising in the right paper. It's really, really important. There are companies out there that advertise that they can do O license amendments and adverts, and potentially they're not the right ones. So do make sure you do your research on that. It's really, really important to make sure that it's the right type of advertisement and in the right paper. Okay. Obviously, the next thing is making sure you get your authorizations right. So making sure that you got your authorization and that you're applying for those to be covered for the operating center that you're applying for. So financial evidence. I see all sorts of financial evidence errors. Sometimes the value's not enough on the bank statement. The bank statement's in a different entity name, or potentially there's spurious transactions within that statement. Sometimes people try and send screenshots of their online bank. None of that is acceptable. You need to make sure you got the right statement. You need to make sure that it's in the name of the correct entity that you're applying for. That's really, really important and something that often gets overlooked. The transport manager part of the application. So TM1 form, I see all sorts of errors there where transport managers might say they might be an external transport manager and then they say that they're not actually on another license. You need to tell the traffic commissioner that you're on all of the licenses that you're on. And one of the other things you need to remember is on previous TM1 forms, what have you told the TC? Because they retain those, and it's really important that you don't make sure that you don't duplicate hours. So for example, if you've done one application that you're still a transport manager on another O license and you have told them that you're going to be working Monday to Friday 9 to 5 on that O license, if you then submit a new TM1 form for a different transport management role and you put the same hours, they're not going to like it. They're going to be asking you questions and it's going to get batted back. Okay, really, really important that you take note of that. The next thing is allocating vehicles. Now, I'd be reluctant to allocate any vehicles on an O license application because it comes under scrutiny as to whether you're operating those, or potentially you might be using those vehicles on another O license. They might be linked to another O license, and then that will appear like fronting, and that potentially can raise concerns from the Office of the Traffic Commissioner. So make sure you don't take any vehicles on until your O license has been approved. I'd really, really recommend just keeping it clean, get your O license approved, then look at buying vehicles rather than making applications with existing vehicles, because that's going to open up scrutiny to other O licenses where that vehicle may already be in use or insured for other O licenses.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals.
So the next thing is safety and compliance. So here we need to make sure that we tell the traffic commissioner how regularly we're going to be inspecting our vehicles. Now, most people automatically will go for 6 weeks because that's the industry norm. Do make sure that you really think about that and look at the recommendations around regularity of servicing, because actually it's more difficult to change this after the application's been approved. And remember that you can always inspect vehicles more often than you tell the traffic commissioner. So in some occasions, it might be better to actually put 8 weeks on there, particularly if you do less mileage or your work is less arduous and you think it's going to be safe to do 8 weeks. Why not put 8 weeks on that application? Because if you put 6 weeks and in the future you want to change it, you're going to need to do an investigation as to why you're changing it and notify the traffic commissioner of any changes. Because if you move it from 6 weeks to 8 weeks and don't tell the traffic commissioner, you're going to potentially get into trouble if there's ever an investigation by the DVSA and they notify that you're on 8 weekly inspections and the traffic commissioner is expecting you to only be on 6. So there we go, just bombarding you with information here. One of the other things that I regularly see people get wrong is making sure they put their safety inspector down. We need to make sure that you've got a contractual agreement in place. Don't put yourself down if you're only going to be carrying out repairs. One of the things I find is that many people will put their name down because they're expecting to change bulbs or do minor repairs. Only put down the safety inspectors that are actually going to be carrying out your regular PMIs. They're the only people you need to put on there, and you need to ensure that you have a GV79 in place to help back that up. Common thing I see wrong there. Regularly people will put themselves down and their own business address because they're going to be maintaining the vehicles from a sort of minor repair perspective. It's not necessary. Financial history, you need to go through and make sure that you've ticked all the boxes correctly there, and then you need to share any previous license information. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is if you have been on any previous licenses, you need to notify the traffic commissioner of those previous licenses, and it's worth checking out to make sure that all of the directors and shareholders are correct, making sure that there's no accounts overdue, because that's all stuff that will come up and potentially get batted back by a caseworker as questions, okay? As well as any convictions, previous public inquiries and details there. you then need to make sure that you properly sign the undertakings. So there's lots to think about when you're doing the application, and there's lots of ways that things can go wrong potentially or cause additional scrutiny. Now, the thing with doing an O license application is if you do make any omissions or make any errors like I've just mentioned, what will happen is the caseworker will push it back to you. It then gets delayed in the application process. Any interim license that's been applied for won't go your way, and you'll then need to respond. You then respond, and potentially if you still haven't satisfied any requirements, or potentially there's still issues with your application, then it's going to potentially have a second query that's going to come back to you as well, which will then delay proceedings even further. And ultimately, any further concerns or anomalies or errors could result in a refusal to grant a license, or it might incur a preliminary hearing or a public inquiry. So it's really, really important to make sure that we get those applications right, we get our ducks in a row, and to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing and where we're heading. Like I say, it's a minefield of an area, and not only when you're doing an application, but also when you're doing an amendment as well, or when you're changing a transport manager, for example. I see it all the time where a transport manager will leave, and maybe that company's got multiple O licenses, and what they'll do is they'll just stick one of the other transport managers on in a response to that transport manager leaving, with no consideration to making sure that the transport manager's got capacity to cover all of those vehicles. That's a major error, particularly if you're maybe recruiting for a new transport manager. You're better off removing the transport manager, writing to the traffic commissioner and explaining that you're going to be recruiting for a new transport manager. In the interim, you're going to cover from other people, because you need to have time to recruit a transport manager, and usually what will happen is you'll be granted a period of grace. It's really important to take that opportunity to make sure you recruit the right people and don't rush into things. Okay, particularly overloading existing staff members or causing concerns because your transport manager hasn't got the capacity to cover all of those additional vehicles. So lots to think about. If you're interested in having any support with an application or amendment to your O license, please do get in touch with Flagship Partners. It's something we do on a regular basis. Most operators will likely only change their O license, renew their O license, or apply for a new one on a very irregular basis, very irregular. So that's something you don't often do as a transport manager. Now, the good news is we're doing that all the time for our clients. We're supporting them on a regular basis, which means we're able to offer you expert guidance to help support you get that application right first time, and to improve the speed of potential grant of that O license or amendment that you're looking for. Okay, I hope that's been useful. Please do add any comments. What are the common errors that you see on O license applications? It might be worth getting a caseworker on sometime, although I believe they're all going fairly anonymous these days, for rightly so, for some of the haranguing they get from different people in the industry. I totally respect the decision to do that, because it's not really fair on them. However, it'd be great to have a traffic commissioner or somebody to come on and share with us the common mistakes they see on O license applications. That'd be really interesting. But for now, this is definitely my observations, and I hope that it's valuable for you. Anyway, I'll see you all on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.